I'd like to welcome you back to our study in the book of 2 Corinthians. Today we're in 2 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter, starting with verse number 7. Now let me just remind you, please go back and listen to yesterday's podcast. Actually, go back into last week's podcast, because that way you're going to get the complete context of what's being said. Now the Apostle Paul is talking, and he's reaffirming the faith of the Corinthians. Again, the Corinthian church was a mess. We see that in the book of 1 Corinthians. Now they've come back, they've repented, they've come back to the Lord. And one of the things that needs to happen whenever a person comes back to the Lord is they need to be affirmed in their faith, and that's exactly what the Apostle Paul is doing. Now he says now in verse number 7, "But if the ministry of death in the letters engraved on stones came with glory, so that the sons of Israel could not look intently at the face of Moses because of the glory of his face, fading as it was." What's the Apostle Paul talking about here? Well, the Apostle Paul is describing the Old Covenant. He says here the ministry of death. Now, the word ministry is the Greek word diakonos, and it means to be a minister of. Now, what we understand from this is that the Old Covenant was here and was given to be a ministry of death. Now you say, well, that doesn't sound very good. Let's just throw out the Old Covenant. No. The Old Covenant had its purpose. It still has its purpose today. The law still has its purpose today, and that is to show people their sin, to show people the condition that they're living in. And that condition is death. Now, death does not mean to cease to exist. Death means separation from God. Spiritual death means separation from God. Back to verse number 7. "But if the ministry of death," and then he goes on and explains what the ministry of death is, "in letters engraved in stones." How many of you know Moses went on Mount Sinai? He took back with him tablets of stone that had the 10 Commandments engraved on them. And then he goes on now in verse number 7, "came with glory." We need to understand that the law came with glory. You see, when Moses came down from the mountain, from Mount Sinai, the glory of God was so on him that he put a veil over his face, and we're going to talk about that. So, going back to verse number 7, "so that the sons of Israel could not look intently at the face of Moses because of the glory." Now, the word intently means to gaze at or to fix your gaze upon. They couldn't look at Moses' face because Moses' face radiated the glory of God. Moses had just been in the very presence of the glory of God, and it was radiating. Now look at the last phrase of verse number 7, "fading as it was." That's a key phrase, because the glory of God that came on the letter of the law that kills, it was always meant to fade. Do you understand? The glory that Moses had faded away. Now let's go on into verse number 8. And it says, "How will the ministry of the Spirit fail even more with glory?" So what's Paul saying? He's saying, now we are under a new covenant, And this is the new covenant of the Spirit. And he says the ministry, and again, he's talking about something that ministers something. The ministry of the Holy Spirit. How many of you know the Holy Spirit is ministering to you? But one of the things that we don't realize is that the ministry of the Holy Spirit today is a ministry that's encapsulated in the glory of God. Now notice what he says. How will the ministry of the Spirit fail to be even more with glory? Moses came off the mountain. His face radiated with the glory of God, but that glory was fading away. But now we are living in a time under the new covenant where the glory of God is not going to fade. It's not going to fail. It's not going to go away. Going on now into verse number 9. Now, hopefully this is getting you so excited that you can't stay in your seat anymore. Verse number 9. For if the ministry of condemnation has glory, which it had. For if the ministry of condemnation has glory. Now notice he changes the wording here. He's talking now about the ministry of death, but he's talking about the ministry of condemnation. How many of you know that the law comes and it brings condemnation? If the ministry of condemnation has glory, which it does, how much more does the ministry of righteousness abound in glory? What's Paul doing? He's comparing the ministry of condemnation to the ministry of righteousness. And what is he using as his comparison? The glory of God. As a believer, you are living in the glory of God. You know, I've heard people say, oh, Lord, send the glory. And I think the Lord's up there, already done that. I sent you my Spirit. I gave you a new covenant. Oh, Lord, send the glory. No, the Lord's saying, I already did it. The glory is found in my Spirit. The glory is found in the new covenant, the covenant or the ministry of righteousness. How many of you know righteousness comes to you and I, and it comes for the purpose of ministering? Verse number 10. For indeed what had glory, in this case has no glory because of the glory that surpassed it. The law had glory. It had the glory of God. But what happened is the glory of the ministry of righteousness, the glory of the ministry of the Spirit has come, and it's completely overshadowed the glory of the law. And that doesn't mean that the law is taken away, because it still has purpose. But it just means that the glory of God overshadows the glory that came from the law. Now, I'm going to bring this to a close today. You know what? It's so vitally important that we understand that as believers, that we are living in the very glory of God. We're living in the glory of the new covenant. I hope you have a great day. God bless you. Join us tomorrow, because we're going to continue our study in the book of 2 Corinthians.